Hello friends, welcome. It is the 18th of February. I'm Chris with Elevate Cafe. Let's take a look at the markets briefly on the S&P, and I want to show you a few things I'm watching intraday as I'm looking at the markets to kind of get a feel for it. I think you'll probably find it interesting. And then, I want to also touch just a little bit on Bitcoin. Not a lot of movement there, but let's see where we are. So yesterday we closed right here towards the highs. If you've seen yesterday's video, we had pretty decent volume, and then today yesterday we were saying, the expectation for today would be that the market will jump higher based on yesterday's close, and then we'll see once it kind of gets up there. So what happened was, we did open, we went a little bit down at the open, and then we had a pretty powerful rally all the way up into the 50-day moving average, and then we kind of stopped and pulled back. And if you look at the volume, was kind of weak, and there were a couple of tricks intraday that were telling me that the market is not behaving right. I was able to do a little bit of a scalp on the downside, but it really wasn't too much to do. So now what? We are basically sitting here. The market wasn't able to to get enough strength. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but based on today's action, I'm not too encouraged for tomorrow, I would say. Although the close was fine, but we're still below these averages. I don't think you want to be trading with the bullish bias in this market. You got to be, in my view, kind of careful, very selective, and very nimble, and otherwise, the capital can go quickly. So I wanted to show you kind of what happened intraday in here. So this is kind of where we opened, and we were a little bit weak, and then we rallied, then we came down, and then we had this kind of powerful rally. So as this was happening, I'm watching the S&P right here versus the RSP. So the S&P 500 is the line in black, and the RSP, which is the equal weighted S&P 500, on the same chart, on the 1 minute chart. And it's a kind of a good way to see who's stronger in the market. If you've noticed today, there were basically the large cap stocks that pushed the market higher. That's where kind of all the strength was. And we had a pretty good huge advanced declines in the in the NYSE, in the S&P, in the Russell, in the Nasdaq. Everywhere we've had pretty powerful advances versus declines. But right around this time back in here, we started to kind of lose that. And as the market was trying to push higher, the RSP pushed lower, and the advances versus declines were starting to drop. And that was a pretty powerful signal that the market does not have enough power to continue to go. And this back here happened exactly as it was hitting the 50-day moving average. So these are levels of opportunities where you can kind of judge the internals of the market and just see how you can take advantage of that. Because if the price, obviously once you see a powerful rally like that, in my view, it's not good enough to long because you're below the 50-day. So that's not a good strategy. If you're looking for shorts, you don't want to short into a powerful rally, and you want to look for some kind of an indicator there that can tell you that it's time to maybe step into the market short if you notice certain things. And this is what I've noticed. The advanced decline line is kind of starting to move lower. I noticed the RSP that was trying to pull away from the market, which means that the general market was weaker, but just the larger stocks were carrying it over. And then they were also fighting that 50-day. So, I'm also watching kind of the tick in the market intraday, and you can see kind of what's going on with price, and if it's getting extreme. And I guess just around the time that, and it could say that maybe the news had something to do with it a little bit on when I guess the Fed minutes started to come out, then the market, then it started to sell off, and it started to kind of had more advantage, or to kind of decrease a little bit faster. So, this was kind of a good move to the downside, and then it kind of people maybe got a bit too short or kind of scared, and then we kind of ended up going higher. So anyway, what I wanted to kind of explain here was, watch this, what's happening between the equal weight and and the irregular S&P to kind of see who's leading the market. If they all move into the same direction, that's a powerful market. If you start to have divergences, then you can kind of tell. And again, if you're near big support levels or moving averages, then you can judge these things and kind of take a trade based on that. Requires a little bit of daily involvement. It kind of feel that price and kind of how it goes, but those are some things that you can do intraday. And yeah, then I also watch VIX, which is a market that continues to. You notice what's happening in here? We're continuing to have higher highs and higher lows. So it's trading with the bid tone to the upside. We have a lower level in here that is like a trend line that you can see. You have kind of the upper boundaries, but it's continuing to raise. So the volatility is increasing in the market, which is again, it's another sign of a tougher market and of a market where things are more prone for failures from the upside rather than higher breakouts. So it's just a sign in kind of how one should approach the market when the VIX it's doing like this. You got to be careful and don't trust it too much, because at any moment this can really push. So let's see kind of how that goes. All right, so that's kind of what I wanted to show you there. And again, here was kind of the same thing that you saw back here. But just kind of how the S&P. You can also look at the waves, but this is just it's a very, very short time frame. I don't like to count waves. So you can. I don't have enough experience, on a 1 minute chart to count waves, and I know it's almost impossible to. Although there are structures, you can see them, but I would not to put too much weight into that. So let's take a quick look at kind of what's been going on in Bitcoin. In here I'm looking at the bar chart. The wave count basically on the downside, it's pretty straightforward. We everybody knows it by now, I guess. If you're on the Elliott wave, everybody's kind of looking at this, right? In a 1, 2, 3, and what's happening in here? Is this a 4 and we're going to do one more low? Are we going to start pushing higher? Was the move already done? What's going on in here? So the help that I get from this, looking at the Elliott wave in here, is just basically telling me there's no point to do anything in here. If you've missed the trade in this, and I didn't personally take it because I don't really like shorting Bitcoin, as much as I like to short sometimes the market or other stocks. In Bitcoin, I'm not a short. I don't think I've ever shorted Bitcoin. Maybe in the beginning, I don't even remember. But it's just. The kind of the move to take was after this starting to fail, right? This kind of corrective move in here, and then the moment you're kind of starting to look, and this started to look like a 5-wave move, then there was chances all the way in here to kind of take a chance on Bitcoin with stops above these highs, and if you've missed this lag to the downside, there isn't much. There are people that like to trade fifth waves because they're kind of a short thing, because if you see a 3, then you have a 4, and then you must have a 5. In things like Bitcoin, I think it's tricky, so I would not attempt to do this for a short move lower. It's just not my thing. If you do, just be very, very careful with any rallies above this level, above 72. But this would be an expectation that the market will break lower, and then if it does, then what happens from here should be, some kind of an ABC that could run, as I've said many times, all the way back here, or you can do some kind of a fib. There's just so many variations here that, again, I don't like to speculate. I'm looking at the larger move again for right now as a kind of as a larger decline here in a in an ABC, and then then we'll see what happens after this gets completed. I do not have, again, a lot of confidence here in Bitcoin, as I keep repeating in every video, until the tape starts to look a little bit better. We're getting above the 20, we're getting above the 50. Ideally, you want to get above this level. So there's just so much time that it needs to do. From a from a longer term perspective, these levels are pretty interesting. If we look at the kind of at the monthly time frames, you are again against that kind of longer term. I think this is my 46-month or whatever it is in here, and it's it's kind of near the realized price, and it's but the price has to respond and show you that that these are good lows. And so far, we're still struggling here. There's nothing on this monthly, not even a tiny little black bar that can say something. And you can see if you look in the back, how important it is to get signals like that, right? Because there is really no rush. Like this was a pretty good indicator. Looking in hindsight, maybe at the time it felt weird. Then there was another one in here. Then you had the corrective move, and then volume starting coming in, and you're starting to move back. So we need something like that, even on the weekly time frames, to show something, but really hasn't happened yet. So you can't really rely just on the fact that you can see a three-wave decline. This can always morph into something bigger. It could be a 1-2, 1-2, and then you crash, or you can something else can happen. You can develop into a big triangle. Who knows, right? But that's kind of these kind of are my thoughts for the day on the market. So we'll see what's going on tomorrow. Is it? I think it's Thursday tomorrow. So I'll have another video tomorrow evening. But until then, be well and be careful out there. Bye.